Okay, today is a topic I've been working on for a while and a topic I find to be incredibly interesting because today we're once again looking at the underworld economy of a video game and the hacking community it fosters. The game is Escape from Tarkov, and the results are kind of staggering. Escape from Tarkov, like no other video game I have ever seen in my entire life, fosters a real world economy of paid hacking, carries, item trading, and more, to the tune of, theoretically, hundreds of millions, but without question, easily tens of millions in revenue. That's a lot. That is a thriving economy of illegal transactions, and in most other games, I would argue that these players exist in a parasitic relationship with the title, negatively impacting the overall longevity. But in Tarkov, it's hard not to argue that there is a symbiotic relationship at play here, where the developers will never truly crack down on the underbelly of this economy because it has become, simply put, far too profitable for them to ever even consider it. That's speculation on my part, honestly, based on everything I've found over the past few days and the logic behind it all. So, how is that possible? First and foremost, it's possible as a function of the basic Tarkov economy. The gameplay revolves around high risk, high reward raids in which players battle against each other for loot spoils on an instance map. There are certain areas that are more lucrative, certain guns and attachments that are far more sought after, of course, and in theory, it's a pretty amazing concept. However, despite the foundational appeal, this structure also highly incentivizes a few different meta tactics, one of which is apparently hacking. In Tarkov, there is a wipe cycle. Think of it like a Rust wipe or a Path of Exile League start of sorts. Periodically, Tarkov will wipe player inventories and roll back the entire economy for a new wave of raids. This prevents hyperinflation and balances out what would otherwise be a runaway train of ruble and item quantity, which would probably utterly destroy the player-to-player trade system. This is actually a pretty good solution in theory, for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, that fresh start is very appealing to competitive players. A level playing field, a fresh race, the knowledge that you can get ahead and that you are not entering the arena behind in every conceivable way when compared to everyone else. It's honestly addictive. That's actually one of the things I love most about Path of Exile, because it allows you to enter and exit the game cycle in perfectly crafted little windows. Take a few months off and come back at the start of a wipe, and jump in with that fresh grinding atmosphere, which for most titles only comes a single time in their entire lifespan. Well, that might seem great on the surface, but in reality it has some horrifying side effects. The biggest one, by far, is cheating. Tarkov suffers from a massive hacking problem, and this problem is exacerbated to the extreme whenever a wipe occurs. Those same appealing moments in the beginning where the playing field is level are just as appealing for those who can make it not so level. And to better explain just how bad it really is, I need to quote a cheater himself named Woody, who recently spoke with an outlet called NME about the Tarkov real money trading economy. Woody said, and I quote here, 50% of the raids I go into, there are people using shoot-through-wall, aimbot, or silent aim cheats, end quote. And he further notes that this does not account for more subtle types of cheating. This metric is only the completely obvious ones who are utilizing explicitly visible mechanical hacks. I should add at this point in the video post-script that he knows this because he himself is hacking. He can see player stats through walls, he can see their movement, their patterns, who they're killing, everything really, and he knows for a fact that these people are cheating, which means he's able to tell in a much more definitive way than just, oh, I died in a suspect manner, therefore he must be cheating. He knows for a fact they are cheating. That is a horrifying metric when you remember that Tarkov is a hardcore player versus player title. This game is predicated on competition and reflex aiming. It is about skill, positioning, gear, and so much more, but hacking, even a small percentage of it, fundamentally undermines that entire concept. Knowing that, why do these people do it? Simple answer, profit. Profit is the central motivation, and profit they absolutely receive, because Tarkov hacking, especially at the start of each wipe cycle, is off the charts. The first thing to know is that when you Google search Tarkov carries, you get a barrage of actual Google ads. These ads redirect to third-party seller economies, each their own website, which sometimes contain thousands of offers for almost every item you can imagine. Every currency, every service, everything. These websites pair buyers with sellers and greatly contribute to the profit potential of hacking in Tarkov early on in the wipe. Now, the next part is tricky because most of these websites don't actually make order metrics public at all, but one of them does. IGVault.com has a total seller order number displayed next to their profile, and also, most importantly, a feed of what people have ordered from that seller at the bottom of the page. This means we can actually go in and start to kind of check how much money has been earned by some of these accounts. And the numbers are pretty insane. I tried to stay confined to sellers who almost exclusively deliver Tarkov runs, carries, items, or currency, and as an example, we can look at Visperi. Visperi has sold over 300 bundles on the website and has packages that range from $5 to $500. Keep in mind, he is a very small seller account, relatively speaking. Obviously, that is an extreme amount of variability between order amounts and dollar prices, but when you start to look deeper at the order volume in some of the larger seller profiles, you discover that even if confined to a loose average, there is hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing through this one website to just a few of its top sellers. Some of them have 20,000 orders delivered. Some have 3,000. Some have 200, 400, and on it goes. Out of the over 1,900 possible offers just for Escape from Tarkov on the site, many of which have hundreds in current inventory, by the way, I analyzed a handful on the first couple of pages. The pages also don't drop off in seller volume delivered, it seems, the further you go. It's somehow algorithmically defined, but not actually top heavy, so that's also important. I analyzed a handful of sellers, maybe a couple dozen at most, and found over $250,000 in Tarkov item sales, loosely speaking. This is obviously a very rough figure. I can't know precisely which of their multiple item sets were sold most frequently, so I tried to do a low-end average, but we also need to remember that this is a handful of sellers on one of the advertised pages after a Google search. This just happens to be the site that has any data available at all, but if you were to somehow gain access to the actual metrics behind this real money economy in totality, it would be astronomical. I was even finding sellers on Fiverr who offer these carries, along with numerous other full-service website shops, and most interesting of all, in the same testimonial given to NME by Woody, we can see that when he isn't cheating or carrying others for profit, he plays on his own legitimate account reserved exclusively for that purpose. This brings us back to the idea that the developers might be profiting from all this. There is a phenomenon in gaming where the vast majority of all hackers in any video game at all simply buy a cheating program and then learn a rudimentary skill set in order to run it. This cheater population, I shouldn't really call them hackers per se, because the people making those cheats would be the real hackers. These cheaters are the vast majority when compared to those who actually craft the cheats themselves. That means, pointedly so, I might add, that any sort of permanent or even semi-permanent solution will oust a great number of those amateur cheaters from the community entirely. However, in doing so, the developers cut themselves off from a recurring revenue stream as these players buy new copies to continue cheating when they do finally get caught on occasion. It's a pretty simple synergy if you really think about it. Cheaters get paid tens of thousands of dollars to carry other players through high-value raids. 50% of all matches post-wipe have blatant cheaters in them, many of whom are doing exactly that, according to a cheater himself who has the ability to see their stats, locations, and activities, making it possible for him to be fully aware of other cheaters. Takes one to know one. Those cheaters are often getting paid, might get banned, but never really get pushed out of the game entirely. A small slice of the profit they make gets funneled back into a new copy. That new copy gets used to generate even more money, and they obfuscate items between accounts through the trading system in order to hide their stash from the ban hammer. It's a pretty clever system when you think about it, and really getting banned is just a cost of doing business. Well, the developers also make money in this entire equation. They sell a copy and ban that copy, only to have the hacker buy another copy, maybe 2 more copies, to have a legitimate account. And when the prevalence of this cycle is so high, it becomes a recurrent revenue stream in and of itself. Also contained in Woody's testimony to NME is a phenomenon he describes as revenge hacking. He outlines how many of the players that he serves on a fresh wipe are only purchasing that service because they themselves are tired of losing raids and items to cheaters. It's a vicious cycle where the prevalence of cheaters creates more and more angry players who then buy the services of a cheater, which exacerbates the problem, thus continuing to spiral out of control. This part is incredibly important. Woody describes how certain spoofing tactics that he uses are detected countless times by Easy Anti-Cheat, but Battlestate Games, using BattlEye as their anti-cheat, have never detected them, not even once. He continued to say that while he himself doesn't make a ton of money, the creators of the cheats and HWID, hardware ID spoofers, are making $40,000 a month easily, and when we combine all of these realities, what do we see? We see a broken game with a broken economy and a fractured community. The technology exists by which Battlestate Games could counter these cheaters more effectively. It absolutely exists. However, in some capacity, they choose not to use it. That might be a function of resources or money or time, who knows, but the bottom line is that this problem is only growing in Tarkov, not fading away. When there is more to be done on the topic of cheaters, since cheaters will actually destroy the experience for many others in the community, arguably almost all of them at this point in time, with that frequency of match cheaters, and the developers do not tackle that problem head on with every effort at their disposal, even to the detriment of their revenue streams or anything else really, while simultaneously making an incredible amount of money directly because of all of it, it requires the question, why isn't anything really being done? Now, you may be wondering, why on earth have I not shown any Tarkov gameplay in this video whatsoever? It would be the logical choice, right? Actually, no, because the Tarkov developers actively copyright strike and try to crush YouTubers who use their footage or criticize them. There are numerous examples to draw from, such as a YouTuber named Eroctic, who was struck some 40 or more times because he showed a couple things and said a couple things that they didn't want shown or said. It's a bit more complicated than that, honestly, but the gist of it holds true. They weaponize DMCA with no remorse. Another example, Blue Drake 42, another YouTuber. I was actually on a podcast with him. He's a cool dude. He got struck because he showed a Tarkov mod. The developers didn't want the mod shown, so they hard struck his channel and refused to work it out amicably afterwards. This is even more insane because their entire game is basically built on the concept of Twitch drops. The whole thing blew up after a Twitch integration spiked viewership. A lot of streamers blew up with that as well. That's like the whole point of why it's popular. And that integration is basically incentivizing people to play their game and distribute content of their game, which they are then willing and able to weaponize against the creators who did it with their own incentive. What the actual fuck is that? So, with all that said, I didn't put any Tarkov gameplay here because they would quite possibly just strike down the video if I did, and that would hurt the channel's future. In conclusion, Escape from Tarkov has one of the most incentivized, vibrant, flourishing, and lucrative real money trading economies I have ever seen in my entire life in the gaming industry. Millions upon millions of dollars are changing hands as a direct result of this game's underworld economy. And that economy is symbiotically allowed to exist and flourish alongside the game itself. It gets worse, exponentially worse, in the aftermath of biannual wipes and that cycle, which occurs something like every 6 months, and the community who don't cheat are being pushed into it or ousted from the game as they encounter this problem on an increasingly frequent basis. But that's it. If you want support, check out the links down below. There's a Kickstarter that I'm helping promote. It's a necktie Kickstarter, by the way, like a men's necktie thing. So check that out. There's a YouTube platform alternative called Odyssey to watch my videos on. There is Locals. It's like Patreon, where $5 a month will help out the channel. Merchandise, another gaming YouTuber to check out, and a whole bunch more. But yeah, I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.